kids, this is Pulse Ray Vision coming to you live from Cuatro Cinco Studios in my mom's basement. And we're here with another reading of Rings of Dust, Chapter 13. I'll share that up on my screen so you can read along if you guys want to learn how to read. This is also useful for that. Here we go, Rings of Dust. There we go, Rings of Dust, Chapter 13, The Faithful. She had her cells, she had not left. She told herself it was the docking bay's proximity to the main tunnel, easier to reach the ship quickly if she needed to. She told herself it was the food, which was still real, in which she was not done eating. She told herself she was running preliminary diagnostics on the Houndstooth before the return run to Titan, which was true in the limited sense that she had opened the diagnostic panel and then sat looking at it without actually running anything. She was staying because on the fourth night, Tyler Durden had sat across from her in the kitchen and talked for 2 hours. She'd listened, and when she went back to her ship, she had not been able to sleep. Not because she believed him, because she couldn't find where he was wrong. The woman who had been the easiest to talk to was Yoon. She'd started saving Jill a place at the cable runs, which was the colony's version of friendship. "You don't think it's strange?" Jill said. They were in the work bay running cable. The Voidwalker installations, the rigging at the east end, required regular maintenance, and everyone rotated through it. The cable was heavy gauge and stiff in the cold. It fought the bends, and Jill's fingers were numb at the tips from feeding it through the conduit clips. The rigging at the far end hummed at a frequency she could feel in the fillings of her back of her teeth. "Which part?" Yoon said. "Any of it, all of it. The sending things into a void and waiting for gold." Yoon looked at her for a moment. "Do you think it's strange that the cells sync on an 11-day clock? That one of 740 always has a jackpot on it? That's mechanics." "It's mechanics we can't fully explain," Yoon said. "Tyler says the line between mechanics and miracle is just the distance between what you've measured and what you haven't yet." Jill had heard versions of this argument before. Usually they led somewhere she didn't want to go. "And the gold?" "And the gold?" Yoon said. "Which is also mechanics, which Elsa mapped." She set down the cable spool. "The void at the end of the east tunnel has a specific gravitational signature. When a stabilized cell crosses the threshold where the gravity lets go, the darker matter interacts with the void, redirects it inbound asteroid traffic along a vector Elsa calculated 40 years ago. It's in her notebooks." "So it's physics?" Jill said, "not faith?" "Both," Yoon said. Elsa understood the physics. Tyler understood what the physics was for. She picked up the spool again. "The cells are real. The gold is real. The question Tyler asks is why? Why does the void respond this way to a specific material? Why 11 days? Why always 1 in 740? Nobody knows. Tyler thinks the cells are in a conversation with something," Yoon said. "The void, the ancestors, the chain of who we came from and where we'll become. He thinks the 11-day clock isn't random. He thinks it's a heartbeat." Jill was quiet. "You don't have to believe it," Yoon said. "You just have to notice that the gold keeps showing up." Tyler took her to the preparation chamber on the 5th afternoon. It was a room she hadn't seen yet, small, off the main tunnel, lit differently from the rest of the colony. Not surgical white like the lab spaces, warmer, the kind of light you associate with things that are meant to be seen slowly. 4 fuel cells were racked along one wall. Not ordinary units, each one a jackpot cell. 1 in 740 that had produced the rare exterior crystal deposit on its 11-day. One chance, one cell. These were the 4 best the colony had ever made, and their single exterior deposits were dense enough that each cell was worth more than anything Jill had ever carried in her cargo hold. The crystals caught the amber light and threw it back in small fractured specks across the ceiling. The cells hummed together, a low coordinates that sat in the chest the way sync resonance had sat in hers on the first day. The air near them was faintly warm and smelled like mineral and something electrical, like the air before a storm that hasn't noticed weather to arrive. Tyler stood beside them the way you stand beside something you're about to part with. We don't sacrifice every jackpot, he said. We choose the best ones, the ones that have been running the longest and producing the most. He looked at her. You're thinking we're throwing away value. You are throwing away value, she said. We're giving it back. He touched one of the cells, not possessively, the way you touch something before you release it. Elsa believed that energy doesn't disappear. It moves. The darker matter goes into the void. The gold comes from the void. The cells keep producing. Something on the other side of the exchange is receiving what we sent. He paused. She believed that people worked the same way, that the energy of a life, everything you built, everything you gave, doesn't disappear when you die, flows forward into your line, into the people who come after you. Jill looked at the cells. She believed she'd come back. She believed all of us come back, Tyler said, into our own bloodlines, if we've given enough, into the people we love, into the hands of whoever is willing to continue the work. He was quiet for a moment. She's buried 40 meters from where we're standing. She came out here, built something, and died in it. I've never met her, but I've read every word she wrote, and I understand why she came here, instead of saying where she was. Where was she before? Working inside the system that became the machine. She left before I had a name, he said. She came here. She spent the last 11 years of her life building an understanding of the cells that nobody inside those walls ever achieved. He looked at Jill. She gave everything she knew to the void. The notebooks she left behind are what we still have. Jill looked at the 4 cells, their crusted exteriors, the darker matter, still growing in the amber light. When is the ceremony, she said. 2 days, he said. She did not ask why she was being told this. He did not explain. She asked Petra about the notebooks that evening. Petra was at her bench, logging the day's readings. The bench was lit by a single adjustable lamp, the kind with a brass neck that someone had bent to exactly the right angle years ago, and no one had moved ever since. The pen scratched across the page in a rhythm that suggests Petra had been writing these logs long enough that her hand no longer consulted her mind about the motion. She did not look up. No, she said. I'm not asking to keep them. I know what you're asking, Petra set down her pen. You want to understand if the physics in those notebooks is real enough to explain the gold. And if it is, you want to know whether that changes your opinion of what Tyler is doing with it. Jill waited. The physics is real, Petra said. I don't know if that's proper grammar. Would it be the physics are real? Let's put that down, 109. Elsa was the most rigorous scientist I have ever worked beside. Every number in those notebooks is correct. The void's gravitational signature, the cell interaction, the 11-day redirect, all of it verifiable, all of it exact. She picked up her pen again. The other parts of the notebook are something I show people who are leaving. Oh, the other parts of the notebooks are not something I show people who are leaving. What other parts? Petra looked at her directly for the first time. The parts that are harder to verify, she said. The parts that she wrote at 3 in the morning after she lost her parents and her colleagues stopped speaking to her, and she'd been out here long enough to stop needing their approval. She held Jill's eyes for a moment. The parts about why she came here, what she believed the cells were, what she believed happened when you gave something you couldn't afford to lose. She looked back at her readings. The pen moved across the page in strokes that were unhurried and exact. Tyler arrived 6 years ago, Petra said. Not a change of subject, a continuation. Alone. He had packed a commercial fuel cell, the first any of us had seen. Nothing else. No tools, no provisions, no plan beyond getting here. Okay, so Tyler could not have arrived 6 years ago because fuel cells were, the commercial ones were created about 4.5 years ago. So, all right, there we go. Why here? Petra's pen stopped. She did not look up, but the quality of her attention changed. The way a room changes when someone in it decides to be present instead of occupied. His wife died, Petra said. Her name was Marla Singer. I don't know how. He has never said, I don't know how. He's never said, and I've never asked. What I know is that he arrived at this colony carrying the kind of grief that has already burned through everything flammable is now just the heat with nowhere to go. She resumed writing. He had Elsa's teachings, not the science, the belief, the idea that what you give does not end, that it goes somewhere, that the void receives. He came here to grieve. He came here to find a framework in which his wife's death was not the final sentence. Petra's pen moved across the page. The colony had stopped sacrificing by then. Elsa was dead, the mine was dry, the notebooks were sealed. The 11 of us who remained had the math and the memory and nothing to carry down the tunnel. We had become, in the Federation's language, a manufacturing outpost. In our own language, we had become a people who remembered something we could no longer do. She set the pen down. Tyler had the fuel cell. He studied the notebooks. Then he asked me if the East Tunnel was still accessible. I said yes. He asked me if anyone would stop him. I said no. He asked me if I thought it would work. What did you say? I said I thought Elsa would have tried it. Petra looked at Jill. He walked down the tunnel. He walked the cell down the tunnel that evening. I watched him go. He did not ask anyone to come with him. He did not announce it. He just went. And 11 days later, a gold asteroid appeared on the tracking screen. 20 meters across. Same vector as all of Elsa's documents returns. Petra picked up the pen. Tyler was in the tracking room when it appeared. He looked at the screen for a long time. Then he sat on the floor with his back against the wall. He did not move for an hour. I brought him water. He did not drink it. She wrote another line. The second sacrifice was the next day. He had a second cell. He walked down the tunnel the same way. Alone. No announcement. 11 days later, another asteroid. He has not missed since. A pause. Every time he walks down that tunnel, he's thinking about Marla. The belief came after. The grief came first. I want you to understand that about him before the ceremony. She looked back at her readings. When you come back, she said, ask me again. Jill opened her mouth and then closed it. She went to her ship. The pilot seat was cold. The houndstooth had been sitting powered down for 5 days, and the seat leather had taken on the temperature of the rock around it. She sat in the dark. The instrument panel was off. The only light was the amber glow leaking in through the bay door seal. She could hear her own breathing, and beyond it, the faint hum of the colony settling into its night cycle, and beyond that, nothing. She sat there for a long time. I like that one. That's a great chapter. All right, kids. If you guys want to know more about agproject.io, go to the website agproject.io, and you can get the darker matter token that's on Pulse Chain. You can mint fuel cell NFTs and put them to work. And if you're really lucky, you can even sacrifice one to the void yourself and see if any gold shows up in 11 days. But if you are not enjoying my reading of the story, which I don't think is great, I think it's okay. And I think it's easier than doing the text to speech yourself on your phone and on your desktop. I've been told that I sound much better at 1.25 speed, if that helps. But I'm going to get these out so that people can literally just go to the playlist on YouTube and listen to the entire book. What we really want is about 10 or more good reviews and feedback on all of these. Find out what places don't make sense. Find out what places are in the wrong order. Find out which places are just dead and boring and kind of stop the momentum and questions that we haven't fleshed out in the book. And then we want to go to 11 labs and make a really good audiobook out of it. That can be our flagship and our calling card to not just the rest of crypto, because the rest of crypto doesn't have anything like this. But this can be our calling card to no coiners. And if there's one thing no coiners love, it's a bull market. That's when they come and they ask, how do I buy this coin? How do I buy that one? How do I get this? At the top of the market. So they can listen to these stories at that point and join when we go from a trickle to a stream to a flood. And if you want to just read this yourself, the link to the public GitHub repository is at t.me/anti-gravity saga. A shout out here to Red Squirrel. He might recognize the outro here. And a good morning to Mr. Crypto Cat. Good morning. All right, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Have a wonderful day.